Hello and welcome to the Sky Blues Extra podcast live from the Sky Blue Tavern. Not only do you get to hear our voices tonight, but you also get to see our faces, which
Hello.
I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. We'll let you decide. Joined this evening by Matt and Dean. We're supposed to have one or two more members of the Sky Blues Extra team here tonight, but illness has ripped through the camp. It's just the three of us this evening, or probably 2.5, because Dino's not 100%.
Yeah, I'm in a bad way.
Joke, is it?
I'm in a bad way. I've been ripped off my deathbed to give some bad takes this evening. So I'll try to keep my voice down to a minimum, I think, because it's really sore. But yeah, we'll crack on. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, lots to get through this evening. We'll be casting our minds back to last summer and how we all sort of felt coming into the season. We'll, of course, also take a look back at all the key games and all the action from the season and some of those special moments in another very exciting season for the Sky Blues. We'll also be doing the Sky Blues Extra Awards as usual. And of course, we'll have a quick look to the summer and our early hopes for next season. So chaps, let's get into it. Matt, I'll start with you. Having the dust has settled slightly from the season. How are you sort of feeling overall about things?
Yeah, I think the best word for me is content. It's a season where I feel content. Obviously, you kind of go online and you see rival fans might talk about the fact of, on the face of it, gone from 5th to 9th, and that in itself is obviously not ideal, but you have to add context to any kind of football season. And for us this year, we've had the main thing that you're looking for as football fans. We've had plenty of those real standout moments that are going to live with us, in my mind, for the rest of my life, really. They've got to that level, and we've had plenty of those this season. And realistically, what is it that you're looking for when you support a football team? So that ticking that box is a massive thing. Yes, obviously, ideally, you don't want to see your team go kind of from the playoffs or obviously going back in terms of their final position. But for us as a club, I don't think there's any debate in terms of saying that we have moved forward in the last 12 months from where we would have been at the end of last season, even though we unfortunately haven't made it to a playoff final like we did last year. I think in terms of setting up that base for where we are heading in the future, we're in a very strong position. So yeah, content for me feels like the right word.
I think that's the thing, isn't it, Dean? Because we've progressed so quickly and we keep exceeding those levels every season in terms of our league position, it's hard to maintain that every year. And because we did so well last year to get that 5th place finish and get to the playoff final, it was always going to be hard to surpass that this year. And like Matt said, we've probably progressed in other areas, despite the fact we haven't actually improved our position in the table.
Yeah, and I think our judgment for this season is a bit clouded by what happened last year, because it was such a one-off, I feel, with how the league panned out. This season was always going to be a little bit difficult to match that, of course, with the complete change in the summer. And it's a change in mentality more than anything. You'll see that when we talk about the signings. It was a season of bedding in, I would say, this year. And for us to end up where we ended up, yeah, I mean, content, definitely, with how things have gone. That's a good word to sort of summarise it. I'm glad we're doing this now, because it's given me a few weeks to sort of think about how the season has progressed. I'm a little disappointed. I think we're mainly because we had a chance and we didn't take that chance. That's probably where the most in the league, that is. And let's put the FA Cup to the side, because I think that's a totally different discussion. It's the bread and butter of the league for me. Where we were in March to end up where we were is a little disappointing, only because of the basis of how we'd played up until that point and where we'd got to and the dream and the aspiration to get into the playoffs. But then when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, with everything that happened with the cup run, the other teams we were facing, I think we can be content in that way. But there is a tinge of disappointment in me to say that we slid away, didn't we, a little bit, and that's just because of the situation we found ourselves in. But hopefully this is a big learning curve this year that we can take into next season and build from that.
I think the slow start as well, right, which we'll obviously come on to talk about. I think two factors in last season, really. That slow start sort of killed us a bit, really. Obviously happened the season before as well, didn't it? So and obviously the cup run as well, as incredible as it was, and special as it was, and we'll talk about it tonight, perhaps, was our undoing in the end, Matt, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, we can't really deny it, can we? I think it's quite funny, isn't it? Because we know Robins traditionally probably hasn't been that big of a fan of a cup run, and it came out at the start of the season, or certainly as we progressed a bit further into the season, that Doug King was quite keen for us to have, something to celebrate with a cup run, and I don't think any of us would change what happened, because you have no guarantees as well. If we don't do what we did in the FA Cup and have those moments, who knows what happens as well.
But it's always going to be in detriment to the league because of the squad size for one, the injuries we faced. If you're going to go for a cup run, it's going to cost you your league position. Yeah,
it kind of backs up what Robins might have said in the fact, or what he believes in general. Certainly before we've probably progressed fully to that point where you can say we've got the strength in depth to say, keep them coming, basically. And we certainly haven't been at that point. And you kind of look at it as well. And we spoke after obviously the cup game, and we were still kind of saying, you never know, and there's still a chance. And when you start to think about that whole game, and I was shattered going to that game, and I'm thinking, how can these players get up for this game, not just physically but just emotionally, after how that came about? And it's not even just the physical side of obviously the amount of games that we had with that cup run. It's emotionally that took it out of all of us, really. And you kind of think, really probably should have thought the writing was on the wall there. So obviously, as you say, it's the squad size didn't really ever support the fact of us being able to handle what we went through in terms of the cup, I guess, in the end. But again, football is about the memories, and we're not really going to argue with some of the memories we had in that cup.
I wouldn't swap it.
Of course you wouldn't. No, I mean, what we went through, the journey in that cup run, you wouldn't trade in anything for that.
No.
And the memories we've gained from that, of course, it could have been even better going to Wembley again next week. But it wasn't to be. One thing I want to make a point about the cup run and the squad issue. A couple of people I've seen mention that Sheffield United were able to maintain a title challenge and a cup run in the season before last. Look at the squad. I had a look at it, and they used 8 different players in that cup run to their general league team. We weren't in any shape to do that. We don't have the quality for one. We didn't have the numbers as well. So you can't make comparisons to that. We're in a totally different ball game. They'd just come down from the Premier League as well. So it's, apples and oranges when people try and compare those two things. So back to that first point. You can't trade in what we've gone through this season, and it's just now a case of building on that into next year. Yeah,
and we could have lost in the playoffs in the final again, which I would argue could have been more damaging for the club overall, because that heartbreak 2 years in a row. I think last year I sort of was like, I'll take losing in the final, just to have that day out at Wembley, and it definitely built the fan base. I think 2 years in a row, I think could have been
damaging to the team as well, because of how a lot of the players that were with us last year we knew were going, so it's kind of like they've got a fresh start. Whereas if it was this year and we lost in the playoff final, we've got 12 players on 4-year contracts.
Yeah,
I tend to think I can see that point with some clubs. I do. With us, I kind of feel, because we're in such a good position with the people around the club, with obviously Robinson, I guess it all starts from him. What he sets out, what the tone that he sets as a club, and the staff need to follow on with that. And obviously they need to have that same mindset. They wouldn't be involved in the club if they didn't have that same mindset and approach. So I kind of think probably we are one of the better clubs at being able to handle that if it had happened. But a very good point, as you say. Last year it kind of felt almost like it was a fresh start anyway, so maybe there wasn't that same level of hangover. And who knows, it would have been obviously a very different situation this year, because of a lot of these players would have been the same as a base. We'd have obviously then just hopefully added to them.
It could have increased their hunger though as well. So there's but two sides to that argument.
We'll never know.
But we'll never know.
We'll never know.
One thing I do know is that we would have given it more of a go than West Brom and
horrific
and Norwich.
Horrific.
Honestly, us, Hull, even Preston would have gave that more of a go. And I'm so glad when I've looked at these playoffs in League One and League Two, the teams that have given it a go have got the rewards.
Yeah, you're right.
Crawley have given it a go. They've got promoted. Oxford gave it a go. They went for it, got promoted. Leeds and Southampton, obviously they're both full of quality. They gave it a go and got the reward for it. Obviously, we don't know who's got promoted yet, but it just goes to show once the shackles are off, you can you can do things. And that's one thing I want to take into next year for this team. At times this year, I thought the shackles were on. I want to see us just be let loose, just go free and play free. Sometimes this year I felt we were reined back quite a lot by the management. And that's probably because of, again, the injuries and the setup of the team and stuff. And that all comes into play. But I just want to see us next year be a bit more free-flowing and go for it, because you can get the rewards out of it. We saw Ipswich this season did the same thing. It can work in this division. Maybe with a year under most of this team's belt, we can look at doing that. So, yeah, excited.
Yeah. Let's just cast our minds back to last summer. Obviously, Dino mentioned it was a summer of change. And actually just sort of preparing for this pod, I forgot how much of a change it was, really. Obviously, we sold Jokeres.
Rogue names on this.
Yeah, yeah, sold Jokeres and Hamer, obviously. They were the two big ones. But, we released Rose, Dabo, Maguire, DaCosta, Kane, Waghorn and Walker, which is mad, really, to think. That feels ages ago that they were playing for us.
Walker in particular, to me, it feels pre-COVID.
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
I think of that dark navy blue kit we wore in COVID. That's what I think.
He's only played a few games this season as well. He's been injured for most of it. DaCosta and Kane have dropped off the face of the earth. Waghorn's just lost his contract at Derby going into next season. Maguire
could be anywhere.
Literally could be
Popwell,
anywhere.
Milton Keynes.
Probably with me on Thursday night.
Dino, know about that one.
Dabo, non-league Dabo. Now,
yeah, you got to feel bad for Dabo, really.
And Rose absolutely hated at Stoke. So you can't say that the people that we've released have gone on to do better things. It's all gone backwards.
I don't think anybody last summer kind of looked at anybody on that list and questioned it either. They were all...
Walker was the only one. Like he was a fringe player at the time, and he still would be a fringe player now.
But I think that's more of hope than actual expectation or anything he did. He was somebody that had come in with a level of expectation, I guess, because of what he'd done at other clubs. But if you're actually basing it on what he did for us, then there should have been no.
And we also
question
expecting Sims and Hadji to come in during the summer anyway. We were going to make changes at the top of the pitch, but we weren't expecting that type of caliber of player, shall we say? Yeah. So I'm going back to last year. I said, I'd like to keep Walker in amongst it, just because of the unknown, basically. It wouldn't matter too much. He wouldn't have got much of a look in this season anyway. So.
Obviously, we lost a lot of loan players as well. Doyle, Panzo, McNally, Norton Cuffey and Wilson Esbrand. But then signed, obviously, a whole host of players. De Silva, Sims, Sakamoto, Collins, Latabodiere, Thomas, Van Avac, Binks, Wright, Kitching and Iari. Big summer of transfers. I remember sitting here just before the season, and I think it was actually the night that Hadji Wright was about to sign.
Yeah, it happened after we'd finished recording.
And we were like, who's this Hadji Wright bloke? We were buzzing about it. But obviously a very, very good summer of transfers. And I think, Matt, we all came into the season with quite a lot of optimism. I know there were some slightly dodgy predictions for the season from Dino and Ross, but I think for the Sky Blues...
Sorry? What do you mean?
I think for the Sky Blues, we all sort of, we were sort of saying we'd be in and around the playoffs, but maybe just fall short. So we kind of got that just about right, Matt.
Yeah, it's a lot of change, isn't it? And I don't think as Coventry fans we really knew what to do with ourselves spending that kind of money. I mean, what was it? With Hamer, we'd signed obviously a couple of years ago, and then the last player over $1 million was Eastwood, 2007, 2008. So we'd gone kind of 13, 14 years, one player over $1 million in all of that time.
I read we were still paying that Freddie Eastwood money in 2018.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that
there was still
you can believe it, can't you? Yeah,
floated around.
So like a decade later, but it sounds about right when you kind of look at our club in the last kind of 20 years. So signing all of those players, a lot of them, obviously a good number of them over $1 million, but a lot of them for multiple millions of pounds was just absolutely wild. I remember the rumours starting to break about Hadji Wright. I was actually away on holiday, but still pretty much effectively just checking my phone all the time to see rumours. And the story broke, and you're saying this can't be true, and then it's like that account looks pretty solid. It's got like 1 million followers. Maybe there is something to this, but the money he's talking about, this can't be.
Till the photos in the hedge came out.
The hedge photos.
That's the only time you can start to believe. Yeah, when someone's in a hedge.
Yeah,
and that guy's post was in between like an advert. Honestly, this is no word of a lie. This guy's post was in between an advert for kebabs that he was trying to tout in his local area. Some Turkish journalist. and something else about a different sport completely. I was like, well, I can't really fathom whether this is right or not.
Yeah.
But you started to see people say, obviously, that close to 1 million followers. You're thinking there's got to be something to this, and then people, start saying there's actually some validity to this, and you just don't know what to do with yourself as a Coventry fan. You've kind of grown up with the history, certainly in the last 15 years or so, in post-relegation, I guess, from Premier League. It's absolutely wild. So it was exciting, but also, I think there was a level of apprehension around the fact of there are a lot of players to bed in here. It's a big ask to lose our two big stars in Hamer and Gyökeres, but also, if you mentioned the loan players, Doyle was massive for us, and McNally, and the relationship they had with Fads was great. And we talk about, again, adding that context between finishing 5th and finishing 9th and the difference between that. A lot of it is just, it's very different, obviously, but that season, Leicester were winning the league, and they needed nothing to go wrong for them to do what they did that season. And we kind of needed that last season. We needed, injuries to key players. We needed, people to bed in perfectly, as we found at the back. We needed our bloody goalkeeper to score a goal away at Blackburn to rescue a point. Just everything seemed to fall our way. Yeah. And it was, I don't believe in the whole, destiny or whatever, but if I was ever going to, it would have been last season had we have won it, obviously, in the playoff final. So yeah, it's certainly very exciting summer for us, but also, I don't know if you agree, but a lot of apprehension around the amount of change the sheer volume of players was going to bring. And I guess the excitement that you have bringing players in on big money is great, but then for me very quickly turns to, if these players don't perform early doors, and we saw this, there's issues, right? There's questions.
Yeah, but
asked.
You didn't join that whole Twitter debacle.
I didn't join it. No,
calling everybody out.
No, I didn't join it.
Maybe on your second account, your burner.
My burner account.
Are you Danny White?
No, I got a few of them. So no, you kind of you understand to an extent, because we've not done this, right. Signing a striker for 8 million, it's almost like the expectation there is surely he's got to have 20 goals by December. The stupid expectation that some people might have, and I certainly didn't have it to that level. But you also, at points, you do feel yourself creeping in with that thought of, I don't expect 20 by December, but I expect maybe a little bit more. And that worries me at the start of the season. I already start thinking of that when you start spending money.
Well, I'm taking that mixture of excitement, all that batshit that was going on during the summer, into the reason why my predictions were completely all over the gap. So that's my excuse now.
Not your fault.
Yeah.
I did think about how tight they kept all the rumours last summer, though. It's lesson for this year.
It feels like this year is even tighter.
But
already.
no one we signed last year was rumoured at any point. And
other than this after they kind of,
the club, that was the club's doing, and the photos in the hedge. But
De Silva was mainly the main one. I would
because he was done the week after the playoffs.
Yeah,
he was already
pretty
signed.
much done January before. But the rest of them
kept under tight lid.
I mean, Kitchen, there was a little bit about him a week before it actually happened, but the rest of them was, I mean, the big one was Sims for me on that Friday evening. And all of a sudden, there was this one Sky Sports journalist mentioned it 7:05
on the Sky Sports. Sky Sports
and
News,
then 9:00 the club had announced it, and we were like, wow. I'd rather it be like that. I hate this sort of prolonged. We're getting it now already, aren't we? With what's his name from Alan Brown from Preston.
Burrows, McCallum.
Yeah, we're getting it now. And it's really annoying. No one's keeping calm. I mean, the season only ended 2 weeks ago, and we're already in hyperbole mode on Twitter and Instagram and stuff. So
it's weird as well, isn't it? Because it creates this sense that we've lost out on people when we might not even be looking at them.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Jorgensen, right? Yeah, the goalkeeper. There's no word of anything from the club, but everybody's we've dropped the ball.
We've lost out.
Because we're putting 2 and 2 together that we need a goalkeeper, and Johansson is the best goalkeeper outside of the top 12. So why isn't he signing for us?
Did concede 90 goals last season though, so
I mean in that Rotherham team though,
but
no one's gonna.
It's still not. I don't know. We need talking about
his save percentage was actually really good in comparison to shipping in 90 goals. So it's I'm not going to be a stat shagger tonight. So
that's my job, mate. All right, let's look back into the season then. Leicester away opening day seems a bloody long time ago now. Weird one, wasn't it, Dean? We should have won it really on the day. I actually
think it's one of our better performances of the season that day.
Yeah.
It was a weird one, isn't it? It's always weird. The opening game of the season, regardless of who you play, is always weird. But for that to be against Leicester away, they'd just been relegated after 8 years in the Premier League, being champions in that time. It was always going to be strange. But we just seemed to click. Like, it was really weird. And everyone thought to themselves, my God, if this is game one, imagine what we're going to be like, towards the middle of the season. We're going to be battering teams. Had you had that chance hitting the bar, the 2 goals were, pretty good goals, weren't they, from, what's his name?
Dewsbury Hall,
who, all intents and purposes is a prick. But you kind of got excited because there were signs during that game thinking it's clicked already. We haven't had much time, but Robbins is working his magic, and it wasn't to be, obviously, during that first period. But if that game had come in that period, well, actually we did play them, didn't we, during that period of really good quality football, and we battered them off the park, even with 11 men on the pitch. So, yeah, it was just a weird one. But on another day, we can take 3 points there and start the season off really well.
Yeah, and then bombed out of the cup at the hands of Wimbledon. But
oh God, I remember that night.
I mean, you say about Robbins not liking the cup.
That was like almost the deal with King, wasn't it? Like, we can do the FA Cup, but at least let me kind of completely disregard that
stadium
Carabao.
Is wild as well. It's like an IKEA flat pack.
Yeah,
it's basically just been put up in the middle of an estate.
Yeah, it is a bit weird, isn't it?
Odd one. That was the first time we saw Sakamoto play in a sort of a more forward position, because we got him and he was automatically touted as a wing back, which is peculiar if we look back now. But yeah, it was first time we saw him at that top end of the pitch. I actually thought he had a decent game at number 10. Bink started as well, played well. But Hadji had 4, big chances that night. And it was 2 late goals that knocked us out. I'm not sure who we would have played the next round.
Was it West Ham or someone? I can't remember.
But it doesn't matter, because it's such a shit cup.
Yeah, it's not the best.
Not even the big teams want to win it. So.
And then obviously following on from feeling great about the Leicester performance, we went and beat Borough at home 3-0, and I think everyone was starting to think, here we go, something special is happening here. Hadji got his first goal. I think this song sort of was born that day, wasn't it? Everyone was buzzing. I remember going to Dylan's Brewery afterwards, and it was a very good atmosphere in there. I thought we were going to storm the league, but didn't quite sort of work out like that, did it? It was a bit of almost like an anomaly of a result, wasn't it? Early season, that Borough game. Yeah,
they struggled towards the start of the season as well, and obviously came good later on. So we say about the poor start, and ultimately, that first 10, 11 games or so wasn't a great start. Those first 2 games, obviously, you look at the performance against Leicester, not the result, but then the result more than anything against Bury, and you are kind of thinking, maybe we aren't going to see that poor start. You look back to a season before then, and circumstance obviously was a big factor in the start that we had there, but you felt, with the number of players we have to bed in, this is going to be a struggle. And those first 2 games, remember after the Bury game, such a comprehensive victory against a side that they went on to struggle, and at that point you don't know that, do you? They're a side who'd been in the playoffs last year, so you're thinking, this looks really promising, and then obviously it kind of fell apart a little bit.
What do you define as the start of the season? How many games do you define the start of the season?
Certainly not 2.
No.
But you already start, when you're in it, in the middle of these games taking place, you're already starting to look at results, aren't you? You're starting to look at performances. So
10, 11 games?
Yeah. But it's easy to do that post-season, isn't it? When you're in the middle of it at the time, we're talking about it now, and the gap between Middlesbrough and the next game is 20 seconds before we talk about it.
Only 2 defeats in those first 11 games.
Exactly. A lot of draws.
And,
so many draws.
And everyone's saying, we're not scoring enough goals. We scored in every game bar 1 in those 11 games.
It kind of touches on a point you're saying around taking a few more risks and taking the shackles off. And I know we'll talk about what will come next season a bit more towards the end, but that is a big part of it for me, because we might have to risk losing a few more games for the sake of winning more. And obviously, if we can turn some of those draws, even if we end up losing a few, but we get more wins, then that's going to be massive for us. And that leads into saying, take the shackles off, taking a few risks. If some of those draws turn into defeats, that's fine, as long as more of them turn into wins. And that's going to be the difference between us, being in that top 6 probably at the end of next season.
We did get a couple of wins under our belt. Blackburn at home and QPR away, Dean, which at the time felt like it was going to. I remember one of my mates, a QPR fan, he texted me saying, "You're welcome for us kickstarting your season." I thought, yeah, here we go, but still didn't quite happen at that point, did it?
No, we played really well that QPR game as well. Again, you look back at certain points and moments in the season, and for me, that was one of those games where you thought, again, something clicked and we'd found, and Sims had found his scoring boots, and obviously we'll come on to how his season deteriorated for a little bit from that point, but yeah, you were just hoping with 2 defeats in those 11 games you could kick on. Like, not having defeats in your head is a good place to be for footballers. Look at the positives. We're scoring goals. Okay, we're not getting wins in certain games, but after those 2 wins, you're thinking, yeah, maybe we've found it now. And now you're going to come on to that run of 4 games, which really.
But I think the turning point was that Bristol City game was interesting because I thought performance-wise, that first half was one of our best performances of the whole season.
Those 4 games, QPR,
not
Blackburn,
away, but
no, QPR, Blackburn, Norwich at home.
Yeah,
we got a shit record against Norwich, and we played fairly well in that game.
Weird game, wasn't it?
Yeah, again, another weird game, and then the Bristol game. You're thinking
how we lost that 1-0. I'll never know.
We've played worse in those previous 3 games.
Yeah,
and come out with 7 points out of 9. And we've lost this game where we've battered them. Absolutely battered. I think it was like 18 shots in that first half, more than half of them on target.
Yeah.
But that was the theme in that period of time. It was, we were absolutely fine creating good chances, not taking shots from outside the area and half chances and things like that. Really good chances, really good opportunities to score, and we just weren't taking our chances. And at Championship level, it might sound a bit cliche to say it, but even against the lower end teams, if you can't assert your dominance, there is always a risk that you're going to get caught by a goal. And at that time as well, I think once you go behind in those games, and then it builds the pressure, and it builds the pressure on those strikers who are new into the club and haven't obviously flown out of the traps in terms of scoring goals, and now the questions are really starting to get asked. The pressure's on to score goals, and then we're conceding sloppy goals. As we'd all say, that was kind of a theme of that period of time as well, and it just started to build pressure, and taking chances at that point in time was a massive issue for us, and quite surprising when you look back on the season as a whole and you say, well, we ended the season scoring a lot more than the year where we obviously ended up finishing 5th. So at that period of time, it just didn't feel like we could buy a goal, and that didn't feel like, okay, this is maybe without trying to be over the top over a long period of time, but it felt at that point where this is an actual serious long-term problem.
But
I guess.
Why was it though? Because it was only those 3 games where we didn't score a goal. We scored 2 against Preston. Like, I don't understand how the hyperbole sort of set in on Twitter and the like to say that we were in trouble, we were banging trouble or whatever.
I can say why. It doesn't mean that it's right, but you've got.
It's stupid because if you actually look at it, we were fine. We were doing absolutely fine. We didn't enter the bottom 3 once during that period. I don't understand why there was such.
But we can understand why, can't we? We'd finished 5th the season before.
Yeah, okay.
We've spent a lot of money on strikers. I'm not saying I agree and it was right.
Expectation had shot right up, hadn't it?
And
the cloud, there must be clouded judgment.
And again, we're talking about these games in 20-second increments versus you're in the middle of it, and this is probably a 2, 3, 4 week period of time where we're struggling to score a goal, and it builds up. And people are what you kind of see with all of us at times see opinions on Twitter and say, some of them are absolutely ridiculous. But what we can't argue is the fact that there's a whole lot of passion around this club from all of these people. They're so invested that we can say, just hold on and be patient and whatever else. But people are so invested in the club that a 2-3 week period of time without a goal. And I think also the fact that we were creating so many chances and not taking them. And you've got strikers who are new into the club and they haven't hit the ground running, and we're coming off the back of having a Gyökeres in the side and finishing 5th. A lot of these things aren't their fault, and they shouldn't be blamed for that as strikers. But that's the reason why, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Everyone's passionate. I understand that, and especially after the game, immediately after the game. That's what I've tried to sort of reserve my emotion now to the day after and try and judge it a little bit.
Not calling CWR on a Friday night and have an argument with Oggy.
I did. Okay, right. I did call Oggy one night.
So calm.
What game was that?
West Brom away Friday night, wasn't it? In like March time.
Yeah, that was bad, wasn't it?
Yeah, if anyone wants to listen back to that, Sky Blue Sounds.
I was the first.
West Brom
I was actually
away.
the first person on there as well. It's not like I've listened.
You
to
set the tone that
It's
night.
not like I've listened to a few people who went, you're talking shit. I've gone in there and started talking shit from the off. Actually, yeah, me and Oggy had it off, didn't we? Maybe
I
we
want to
should
explain that, but yeah.
Yeah.
On the radio. Maybe we should clip that up.
Yeah.
It's quite funny actually
It is
looking
quite
back
funny.
at it. Why did I do that?
Yeah, it was funny.
There you go.
I went- I went
you
full
are
Twitter.
as you say, you're calm Dino, right? You don't
Yeah,
get.
I try- yeah,
but
I
in
try-
the midst of these situations,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah,
moment,
you're
and
right, you're right.
that West Brom game as well. It's that pivotal period, wasn't it, where it's kind of we could go either way. So this is big against a team that's a rival for us in the playoffs. If we can even just stop this, not just points that we make, it's the points we're taking off them. And you watch a performance, you're just so lackluster, and you feel like we haven't really put anything into this game, and it builds.
Well, I still think we did put effort into that game. We spoke about the Bristol game, the Preston
Second
game
half.
away.
Yeah.
There was effort in that game, and we've just come on. One chance changes everything. But for some reason, we just seem to, just there you go.
Just looking at the results.
Yeah, just like that's what I mean. If you look at that bit there wasn't too much wrong. We've scored goals. We've drew a lot of games.
Yeah. Too many draws.
Yeah, there was a lot of draws in that.
If
6
two or three of
draws.
them are wins, it's
Yeah,
a good start to the season,
yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah,
You're probably top half.
Yeah, easily top half.
Yeah.
But just because other teams were picking on points around us, what we were doing wasn't actually that bad.
Yeah.
We probably, in the heat at the moment, you probably think you're up against it. But the reality was that we weren't, and there was plenty of opportunities coming up. After the Stoke game.
But next season, if we did want to have an autos push, you can't afford.
You can't afford to have those big
to get
dips.
playoffs.
No.
You can like lose your first 10 games. It doesn't really matter. But to get in the autos, the points tally's too high.
It's usually
to have a
there
slow
or
start.
thereabouts from very early on the
That's
teams
the
that are
difference,
involved
isn't
in
it,
that
for
top
next season?
thing.
Yeah, you can't have a prolonged period. I mean, Ipswich had a small period, didn't they?
Very small,
It was
yeah.
like 4 or 5 games where they didn't win, and Southampton went through a bigger period, and look where they ended up.
Exactly.
So it's
They had
kind of-
more-
They
miles
had a
behind.
ridiculous period the other way, didn't they, as well?
we
Where,
have a bit of consistency.
Yeah.
We just consistently got draws.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think that 0-0 draw at home to Stoke just before the international break seemed like a bit of a turning point. We obviously switched to the back four as well, which was important, Dean. But yeah, it felt like after that, a bit of time to regroup, and then things started to look up from there, didn't they?
Yeah, I don't think we can sort of undermine how much change into a back four changed the season. And I think it's something actually, I looked back at some of our podcast notes over the season, and we were calling for it. It was to us, it was plain to see what the issue was. It was playing with a back five, because the season before, when we played with a back five, our wing backs were so far up the pitch, they were an extra attacking threat, and we were playing small triangles in that area. Whereas for some reason, this is what I'm talking about, the shackles, Van Avac and De Silva at the time, who actually, De Silva had a really good start to the season. Again, that's something that's clouded people's judgment because of how poor he was in the middle of it. But I was looking at the heat maps, and they're so far back in comparison to what we've always played with wing backs. Dabo was so far up the pitch. McCallum or Matson was so far up the pitch when we played with wing backs. Norton, Coffey, Wilson, Esbrand the season before. Why were our players not that far up the pitch? And it was mainly because we were lacking defensively, and we were scared to go for it. Once we've gone to about 4, we had an extra player up the pitch. It sort of allowed the shackles to come off, which is mad saying that because it should be the opposite way around. When you play wing backs, they should be so far at the other end of the pitch. When we played with 4,
Like Bidwell was getting further forward.
exactly,
a lot,
he turned
wasn't
into an attacking left back.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
Never
kind of
thought we'd
people
see.
don't take in the fact of, obviously you say, well, 3 centre backs against 2 is, 3 is obviously better, but you kind of, that person goes somewhere else on the pitch, and then in
Frees
those other
someone
areas
out,
in the
frees
pitch
somewhere else up,
can
yeah.
stop the pressure that happens at the back, right? It's sometimes, why are you going to get defensively strong? You might people might say, I understand why you do it to kind of sacrifice the defence to obviously try and score goals or whatever else. But actually, there is that other element of, no, if you take one of those players, put them higher in the pitch, you relieve the pressure potentially from stopping the play getting to those players, and obviously it allows them to maybe feel a little bit more organised, and then they obviously showed they had a good connection with the past experiences they'd had with each other as well. So it is that thing, people think, well, if you take a player out of that area, you're doing it to score more goals, you're sacrificing an element there, but actually that player's got to go somewhere else, and he can still have an impact in terms of what happens in that area of the pitch by stopping the ball as simplistically as you can, stopping the ball getting into that area as much as it might have done beforehand. So it made a massive difference quite clearly.
And then it would be changed back towards the end of the season, and it went back to square one again.
I remember listening to the podcast, and you chaps saying about Sakamoto, if he gets injured, we might have to revert back. Yeah, and that was one of our biggest fears.
Yeah.
We had no cover on that side, and ultimately that's
happened.
It's very predictable.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at small tidbits to what derailed the season, Sakamoto is in the top 3 of those, because he was electric in that period over Christmas, and going into January he was unplayable at times. I sat with Ross and I went, is there anyone that I can remember in the past, even at this stadium at the CBS, who has got me off my seat? There isn't many. Gyökeres, when he was obviously running at people, or maybe Hamer when he played a good pass or whatever, but genuinely every time he got the ball you were like, what's he going to do?
And the things that he would do were like, it felt so obvious, but also as if there was no way to stop it. And it felt like this kind of predictable slow death for opposition wing backs, but you can't do anything because he's just so technically good. We're watching him do the same kind of tricks, 2 or 3 tricks really every week, but he just so good. They couldn't do anything honestly, about it.
The best thing I've seen this season was when he was going to go that way, but then cut back that way, and he ran off the pitch to do the bloke. I can't remember who it was against. I'm sure it was a midweek game, but it was unreal.
It might have been Birmingham.
Yeah, it might have been, but it was crazy looking back, and it definitely losing him. He was an X factor. And he was getting this understanding with Callum at that point as well. And you've started to think, well, here we go. Here's those triangles again that we've seen over the past 5-6 years under this Robbins and Vivash mentality and way of playing football. It's coming again. We're getting to see it again. And then to lose him in that game, like you said, I mentioned it in a pod. I said, if we lose him for the season now, that's it. And it come to be. So there's one prediction I'm taking.
Obviously, Christmas was very good for us. Some brilliant results, especially away from home. Borough and Sunderland in particular stick out, especially, like you say, Sakamoto was on fire, scoring in those. Just a little bit frustrating with like the Swansea home game, Matt, that we couldn't quite back up some of those great away wins, could we?
Yeah, but it's one of those things that can happen. We have to... we have to expect those things are going to happen. It was a late goal, wasn't it?
Yeah. Free kick,
very frustrating and
giving it away, wasn't it?
A very frustrating moment. But we talk about obviously injuries coming at terrible times and how that derailed us and everything else. We also probably have to expect things like that are going to happen at points. But we were getting to that point at that stage where it just felt as if we should just pretty much automatically expect to win every game that we were playing, and we were going to find a way. So it was frustrating, I think, because it was so against, I guess, what was happening at that time of the season. And Swansea are obviously one of those frustrating teams for us, we know, and it would have felt nice to obviously put that to bed a little bit amongst other teams that we have a similar record against. But yeah, ultimately, I'm sure we'll talk about certain games where we can probably nail down saying that's probably where it turned for us and things kind of derailed. And I don't see Swansea as that. It's a frustration, but it's also one of those things that happened.
We've won the 2 games before and won the 4 games after. You can't say it was like a turning point in the season. Okay, it would have been nice to have an extra 2 points. But there's 4 or 5 games like that, and you can't really look at a season and go, if only we'd done that, because you don't know what was going to come after. It's like the butterfly effect, isn't it? Really. So
but I do think if we want to get autos, we are going to have to beat Swansea and Preston at some point.
It's those 2.
You know what I mean?
We lost to Rotherham. They won, 3 games all year?
Yeah.
One of them was against us.
If we get Preston first day and beat them, we lump in big money on autos at that point because, that feels...
I'm lumping big money on autos anyway.
If we went up for the autos, it would be so as to lose both games to Preston and still go up.
Maybe it's like we lose 4 games in the season, 2 of them were against Preston.
2 against Swansea.
Swansea, yeah. It's just,
I'll take it.
Even with Liam Walsh in our team.
Yeah, that's the latest one, isn't it?
When's Patterson signing?
Yeah, oh God.
He's probably under
He
the
will
table.
be rumoured.
Yeah.
He will be rumoured.
He's having a curry downstairs. Our incredible FA Cup run got off the ground in early Jan.
We should probably mention the Curries, actually.
Yeah, before we mention the FA Cup run.
I mean, it's a nice segue.
Hey.
The Curries here are fantastic, aren't they?
Yeah.
We've just had one before recording this pod.
What did you have, Dean? A spicy
I went for a
sag?
spicy sag. Yeah, it's chicken sag. Fantastic. Really spicy. It's opened up my throat a little bit because I was struggling to talk earlier today, and it's sort of opened up thanks to the spice a bit. So yeah, I'm really happy. I just love this place. Every time we eat here, even when we've hosted events here and the player Q&As, you've done it with Ross, I've done it with Ross. We always have something to eat post-event, and it's always good. Everyone's enjoying them. Is like sometimes you can't even see it because the smoke from the sizzling place, right? And that might be a good thing if me and Ross on the stage. You don't want to see us, but yeah, it's always a good.
Yeah,
it's always a good curry.
Always creates me a bit of a headache though, because I never know what to get. Because like mixed grill is great if you're with mates sharing one.
Yeah.
Although I did have one on my own last week with Ross.
Yeah, I can tell.
I was like, Ross, let's have a mixed grill. He's like, nah, I'm all right, thanks. You can have one on your own. I was like, sound. Curries are great, but also the wraps, the chicken tikka wraps.
Are good. Yeah.
If you're having something a bit quicker.
Yeah.
So
I really enjoy
bit spicy for you, man.
Yeah, too spicy.
The biggest compliment you can pay is the fact that we had it about an hour ago, and I'm still sat here
sweating.
It's
It's got a dab on. We've had makeup in. They've come in.
For me, I'd usually be in a dark room by this point for any kind of curry. So that in itself speaks volumes. But no, absolutely fantastic food.
Plenty of offers over the summer as well.
Yeah.
Euros.
Loads of stuff going on.
Great opportunity to come down. This place is going to be absolutely rammed, I imagine, during that European Championship.
Yeah,
so
Euros, Champions League final, final, FA Cup final.
Yeah, come down with your mates, have a few beers. Sky Blue Lager helps the club too. Buy some food, have a great time. It's a great place, great venue, and great sponsor for us as well. And again, thank you for having us this evening to record in here.
Yeah, it's a good little recording studio as well for us, isn't it?
That sounds good. There's a bar right over there.
Close to the bar.
No bar staff. I saw Wardy early on just underneath the tap.
Underneath the Madrid tap.
Are they on? Have we checked?
Well, they better be.
We'll find out.
We're about to have a break in a minute.
We'll have a drinks break and have a look.
We'll find out. But yeah, should we move on to Christmas?
Yeah, well, we've done Christmas.
Have we?
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, let's talk about the FA Cup,
FA
shall
Cup.
we? Yeah.
Start of the FA Cup run. Oxford at home. I mean, at the time, you don't think too much of it, do you? You just think, Oxford at home, third round, should be able to beat them. But, you don't really even think about a cup run. But, yeah, it was a good win, Matt. Convincing 6-2 win against Oxford. Yeah,
a big memory that sticks out for me pre-game is how confident I was. And obviously, we've talked about it. We were in great form at that time, so that helps. But I'm a nervous Coventry fan. I'm a pessimistic Coventry fan more than...
You definitely have burner accounts. That's all I see.
Don't let that creep out too much. But no, I'm kind of... When I say that, I mean, I always feel like something's around the corner, right? But I've got plenty of confidence in, obviously, Robbins and the players in the squad that we've got. And we'll obviously talk about predictions and expectations for next season. And even for myself, being generally somebody who's maybe pessimistic is a harsh word to use, but cautious for sure. But I'm not feeling like that for next season. And the point I'm making, about that Oxford game, for me, we're playing against the team who are, we've obviously seen now they've gone up. But even at the time, I think they were in the automatics at that point, either first or second, certainly well in the playoff race. And for me, looking at us playing against a team from, yes, a lower division, but top end of lower division, I'm usually, right, this is recipe for disaster. This is not going to go well. And possibly some of that's to do with the fact that, as we said, Robin's not overly that keen maybe in progressing in the clubs. But I just remember how supremely confident I was in that game. There was no part of me that I maybe didn't expect us to score 6 and win in that way. But there's just no part of me that felt like we weren't going to come out of that game with a victory. Now, look, I didn't think we were going to do what we ended up doing in the cuppers and overall at that point. But yeah, I think it's just those moments in the season that I can look back on and say, this shows. It's obvious what we've done in terms of money that was spent and things like that, but just the mentality in myself, even looking at those moments and kind of thinking, yeah, that confidence that I had in that situation where usually I just wouldn't have that same level of confidence.
It's a great measuring stick, isn't it, of where we've come to from where we were only 4 years ago.
Yeah.
We were in League One.
4 years ago, the season before Wrexham, I went to that game. We got a minibus from here and said we were on with a load of Wrexham fans, and they were like, it's been a good season for us, but not expecting too much. I was like, you might want to start thinking about what could happen here because I did genuinely
seen this before.
And that might have been a stupid thought, but obviously it ended up kind of being a correct one as well. And just those moments where that Oxford game, I can think back to it and kind of say, I was so confident before that game, and it just shows that little mentality shift.
Yeah, some goal by Casey Palmer as well. I think he's one of our nominations, isn't he, for goal of the season?
He is,
later on.
Yeah, and he actually came into his own a little bit I think he built a little bit of confidence that he was a star attraction in this game. He's a star attraction in the Sheffield Wednesday FA Cup games as well for me, but he come into his own, started finding a little bit of form, just back from injury. So yeah, it was a good period of time for him. Okay, he faltered towards the end, but it was when players are in form, you've got to sort of ride that at that time, and we certainly did through that period. But yeah, it was a great result, mainly due to the fact that we were on a good run again at this period, just to prolong it, and that's nice because we've seen COV teams in the past not take advantage of those runs we've been on, and we've let ourselves down and shot ourselves in the foot, and we didn't do that at this stage, which was good to see, and it's a clear mentality change.
Yeah. And then probably one of the biggest memories of the season, that win against Leicester at home, Matt, 3-1 from 1-0 down. Yeah, it's definitely a game that will stick in the memory for a little while.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this. I remember at the time and today, for me, Wolves, massive. Very close in terms of what I would pick game of season because we have a few contenders. But in terms of home games, not just game of the season, but one of the best memories at the CBS. To be honest with you, since we've moved there, when you really think about it and you think about those real clear and obvious moments that might stand out and compare with it. A lot of them have happened at other stadiums, whether it be Wembley or second legs away and things of that nature. So for me, I struggle to think of a game that we've had at the CBS which has beaten that game, to be honest with you, since we've moved in. But certainly this season...
Performance or result? I think we were better against Fulham.
Yeah. I don't think the performance was that good. I just think the result and how important it was to the fans. Yeah. Like, you ask anyone... What home games you want to win this season?
It's them. Yeah.
It's Leicester.
Yeah.
Like the Leeds one was incredible as well, but it doesn't mean as much to have beaten Leeds.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
To beat Leicester at home is like what every COF fan wants.
Yeah, result more than anything. Performance was great, but yeah, if you really thought about it over the course of 15 years or 17, 18 years, whatever it is now since we've been in the stadium, yeah, I'm sure we could pick out other performances which are right up there. But in terms of result, a moment of victory, I struggle to think of one better in the whole time we've been at the stadium.
Got the old Bill buzzing around here. Probably come to a recipe for some unbelievable takes over the season.
Yeah. All semantics in Pop World, Milton Keynes.
Yeah, I went to Pop World, Milton Keynes last week, right? It was a great night. Can't really remember.
No one ever.
They're still, shipping out vodka kicks for £1.50. Jaeger bombs for £1 there.
You need them.
When are you going back?
You need that, mate, to forget the night.
They're still living in the 90s. I wish we were. We'd have Peter Unlove playing.
Yeah. And then we had a bit of a weird couple of weeks. We played Sheffield Wednesday about 3 times. Pretty much dominated all 3 of the games, Dino. But a little bit frustrating that we conceded that late equaliser in the Cup, which meant we had to play them again at home in the replay.
Which one did Liam Kitchen get sent off?
That was the home league game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Boxing Day.
Boxing Day. That was the Boxing Day one, yeah.
Yeah, I'm done with Sheffield. Why didn't they get relegated? Got to play them twice again next year.
Yeah.
Although Hillsborough is one of the best
Great
away days of the year. So,
I like that they're still
we do
in the
have
league.
that.
I think they're like good.
Yeah, it's a proper
big club.
Do you know what?
it is,
It's
yeah.
actually a proper championship next year.
Oh yeah, Derby, Portsmouth.
Lots of proper teams in there,
Yeah.
like proper
Sheffield
history.
United.
It's a bit of a 90s throwback next season, isn't it, in the Championship?
I mean, we'll talk about that later on in the second half, but
I think there's bigger teams in the pound for pound, bigger teams in the Championship than the Prem. Because you think about the Championship,
it's a lot closer next year.
there's not a like really small club in the Championship, really, is there? Especially now Rotherham have gone down. But you look at the Premier League, you've got like Bournemouth, Brentford. I'd even argue Brighton. It's relatively smaller clubs.
Yeah, I'm not asked it actually losing Leicester, Ipswich, and one of the others, Leeds or Southampton. I don't think it doesn't make much difference.
No.
I think it's still going to be a tough league regardless. But I think it's going to be a lot closer next year. But we've got some great days to look. Portsmouth is going to be class.
Portsmouth is great, yeah.
Great memories there. They travel in numbers as well.
That's what I was thinking about the other day, actually. Like now, especially
next year,
now we've made the away end a bit smaller. I was like just going through some of the clubs in my head, and I was thinking it'll probably be full every week next year. Because
losing Rotherham as well, that's great, isn't it? That's shite.
yeah, they'll probably come back up the year after.
Huddersfield, of course
Fixture
they will.
list dependent, isn't it? Like Plymouth on a Tuesday might be a
True.
might be a
It
struggle.
depends on
but-
if you get them on Saturday, like
Yeah.
some of the But
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's but that period.
it was a weird one, wasn't it?
It was
Playing
weird.
them so much.
It definitely was weird, and you could tell that in the first FA Cup game.
Yeah.
Both teams just couldn't be arsed looking at each other in the
Yeah.
face again, could they? So, yeah, weird period. The Casey Palmer incident, we can't forget.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
that
It's
guy
just
got
been-
jailed not jailed, but banned for 5 years. Still should get jailed, but
Should be a life ban, in my opinion.
yeah, just a wild period. It just felt games were coming like thick and fast. I was away for most of this period as well. Like I was in the Middle East, and it just felt like I was getting up at stupid o'clock to watch games, every day while staying awake.
Well, if you could stream them, that was when one of them wasn't available on stream, was it?
Yeah,
Sheffield United. It was the Sheffield Wednesday replay
at home.
at home.
It's because it was on.
You couldn't watch it.
Couldn't watch it anywhere.
I think it was on betting sites.
I was away as well.
Was
It was on a betting sites. Yeah, they do
Even
that
on
with some
dodgy
cup games.
IPTV sticks, you couldn't get it.
I've never seen a game where you can't get it anywhere, which is mad. But
Nobody even recorded it on their phone from inside. I actually get no reception of the CBS anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, normally. Remember Periscope? People used to go live in Periscope. Really show my age here, but yeah, a weird period. I want to point out that Millwall game at home.
2-1.
Yeah, it was 2-1. We went down early, but we showed a lot of fight and spirit that night. And something happened for me that night is that I felt like there was a building of something, a team spirit. We fought our way back into a game which really we weren't in.
Yeah.
It was a real game where we really did find a way to win that
Yeah.
somehow. It felt, like you say, they did score relatively early. I think they had a couple of chances, either side of the goal. There was a chance for them before, and I think there was a couple of chances for them afterwards. And it really kind of, I think, did take the wind out of our sails, because I think we kind of assumed we would dominate that
Steamroll,
game.
yeah.
We would steamroll them, and this was completely against the script. And actually, it did show. Yeah, we could.
Millwall were playing well that period as
Yeah.
well. They were
Yeah.
pretty much in the mix at that point.
They were, and yeah, they'd gone on a good run of form, and we 100% in that game just found a way to win. Somehow we found a way to get the 3 points in that game, and that was nice to see. It's fantastic to win games where you blow teams away, but yeah, again, if we're talking about next season and potential of top two, whatever it might be, then we're going to need to do that at times
Look
as
at
well,
those
aren't
games
we?
and think, we showed some belief that game.
Yeah.
Let's show it again here, a bit of fight, determination, and get ourselves back into it. One thing we didn't do towards the end of the year, did we? Like, we didn't really seem like we were games that we weren't really involved with. Like, we didn't really kick up a gear to try get back into the mix.
Yeah.
We need to see that more.
Yeah.
But there is hope there. Little glimpses like that Millwall game to say there is something there. It's just about nurturing that really and bringing that out more often.
Yeah.
Two very disappointing results were Preston at home and West Brom away. Just in terms of the league positions of those two and the sort of timing of them, felt like quite a big blow at the time, didn't it, Matt?
Yeah, Preston was just a horror show. Let's be honest.
Probably the worst games
Yeah,
of the season.
the only
I reckon it's the worst
competitor-
game under Matt Robbins' tenure.
Wow.
I mean, you could say, at home for sure this season. Say even, probably was even worse than the Rotherham game. You know, obviously you take into account the difference in opponents. You have, as much as you don't like to, but Preston, for whatever reason, they always seem to be in that kind of area of the table, and you kind of at a certain point you have to give them some level of respect for that, because it always feels like you should just absolutely batter them, but they, it doesn't ever really happen. So I think maybe you obviously equivalate a Preston versus Rotherham in terms of the level of where those two squads are, and say they're pretty much a like for like, but let's just be honest, both of them were absolutely horrific performances, and that was probably even more frustrating than the Rotherham game, because when it happened, being at home, the fact that obviously those 3 goals came relatively early in the game, and it just felt completely dead, and we were watching this game for 60 minutes, which felt like it had nothing to it. That was the Saka injury as well, wasn't it? Saka motor injury. It just felt like one of those nights where you just
overall just an awful night.
Want it to end, basically.
How would you think, actually, like being away from the country for that whole period, really, at this point? How was you feeling about how things were shaping?
Probably about the same as everyone else, to be fair. Like, I feel like obviously not being at the games is weird, but you still just get, being on Twitter and whatever, you just get the feeling from everyone. So yeah, it was weird to be away, but I felt very much involved in it. Obviously,
Nights like that, you're probably thinking,
wow,
I am
mate,
away. You know what I mean?
Mate, it's third goal winning. I went to the beach and had a beer.
All right, you're right, mate.
So
Spocker that night, didn't you?
I did feel sorry for everyone else who couldn't do that.
Everyone else went downstairs to have a fucking warm Madry and a pint that's £6.50.
Yeah, I was going to say £7 Madry. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I felt after that night, I was like, okay, maybe it's over. And then West Brom was like redemption. I thought if we can pull something off there, even like a point, I thought, everyone was like, we have to get 3, but I thought even a point maybe would have been a good result. And then,
do you know what? They didn't have to do anything for that win, West Brom.
No.
That's happened a few times.
They were really poor goals, weren't they? Somebody, I can't remember. I mean, somebody. I remember one of them wandered to the byline with no problem whatsoever. Flicked in across. Nobody was on the man. It was like a pretty much a free. I don't know, it was a header, or it was ended up being a volley or something. But there was just nothing defensively.
Johnson scored that goal, cutting him that he did 4 weeks previously every single weekend.
Yeah. So great finish for that goal, but still,
but then the Diangana one, we had 2
chances
chances to clear, and we don't clear, and this is when all these little critical moments at the back, all these mistakes started to creep in. We started swapping and changing stuff, and it was just like
that was the period,
wild,
wasn't it? Going back to back 5 or back 3
going
with
to 5, and then we
wing-backs
changed the keeper, and then like different centre half pairings, and took a different left back into different games, and you're like, why? Like most teams built on most good teams are built on a solid foundation. We'd found it. Why are we going away from that? I don't understand why we did that.
It's kind of one of those questions from this season that if you could spend 20 minutes with Mark Robbins, that would be one of the questions I'd really want to, because everything else feels relatively straightstraightforward, clear.
Spend 15 minutes on substitutions, 5 minutes on why do you keep going swapping and changing. And yeah, it's just odd. I hate sort of like querying what the manager does, because obviously he is the manager and he sees the team day in, day out, and we obviously have no clue on what happens. But I don't, just from the outside looking in, it's like why do that? Like,
Stoke away, I remember I've one of the funniest experiences or weirdest experiences being in the pub just as teams getting announced, and an audible gasp around the pub at the team sheet, and it was like
it was Wilson in for that one as well.
It was Wilson, but it wasn't. The
goalkeeper situation got really weird, didn't it? As well.
I mean, we will talk about that with like transfers, but yeah, that whole situation around that was just mental.
And it was, keeper was one. I think that was the first one that he came back in for, but also Tavares came back in to start out of nowhere, and I think Bidwell was out, and there was about 4 or 5 in that team, and you just like, what happened?
Single game, week in, week.
But it all just seemed to accumulate in that one game,
in that weird period.
It was weird.
It was odd, and we weren't playing like this. We wasn't playing Wednesday, Saturday
No.
at this point. It was like one game a week, and we were still doing these changes. And you think, if you're not fit after that, like if you're tired, like again, the excuses start to come in. That's why this was the big argument I had with Oggy. Now it sort of it reaches my memory. He kept saying like the players are tired, but start utilising other players then. at different areas of the pitch, and you go, "Oh, our attackers are tired." Well, make some changes at the top end of the pitch. It was all like, yeah, it was just. I'm just going to find that recording and shoehorn it into this podcast. I think
Just stick it in.
Yeah, I'll just
insert
stick it in.
here.
Yeah, we're going to take a break here, and we're going to stick that interview in now. Actually, the BBC would probably kill me if I did that. But yeah, it was. He just contradicted himself all the time. I thought with his comments and stuff, and all, and it just seemed to be a weird time again. And after the period we'd just gone through with those sort of from that Leeds game in December to where we were at this point to that Preston game, it was just why what's the difference that's changed at that period? Why do that? I don't.
Maybe he was allowing for the fact of still being in the cup and trying to make allowances for that. I think a couple of the decisions that he made were he was trying to maybe cut a corner a little bit, try and kind of I can maybe get away with this because I know we've got we've got Maidstone coming up in the cup, whatever. Just kind of cutting a few corners to try and stretch out the season for players who are going to have to play a lot of games. And that mentality. I know we're going to talk about
squad size.
Yeah, exactly. But you get drawn against Maidstone as well, and you kind of, as much as nobody's going to say this, he's probably not even just thinking, they're going to have to play the Maidstone game, even though we think that we can get through it. But then there's probably going to be another game after that as well, because let's be honest, we're probably going to get through that round. So there's another game that might be a replay. Well, actually they cut the replays, haven't they? So it wouldn't have been a replay, but almost certainly another game. And I think maybe he tried to cut a couple of corners in that period of time. Maybe tried to get a little bit, maybe overthought it a little bit. Maybe thought we have got a small squads, a lot of games coming up. Maybe tried to cut a few too many corners for a small period of time. But the reason I say, 20 minutes of Robbins, that's one of the questions I'd ask, because it's very rare for him to do something that you kind of think just doesn't really make any sense, to be honest with you. And like, you're going back to your original point about the West Brom game, you're right, we didn't need to win that game, even though at the time it feels to a lot of people like you needed to. But taking a draw out of that game and not only getting a point for us, but taking points off them, as we saw by the end of the season, if we'd have had any kind of form,
we weren't far off them.
We wouldn't have been that far off. So
a point there would have actually been.
It shows you kind of you overinflate in your head at certain points. Games in February and March, there's still time. There's still plenty of games, but it feels at that moment again.
Like we overinflated the first 10 games.
Yeah, exactly.
Where actually nothing was wrong.
Yeah.
Like we just weren't getting the rubber green, or that one decision going our way, or the ball going another way,
or taking the shackles off a little bit, like you say. Yeah.
Let's flick back to the cup again then. Maidstone at home. I'm actually interested to see what you boys thought when that got drawn, Maidstone, because I was pretty excited, because I thought, actually, out of anyone in that tie, in that draw, I was like, if we get Maidstone here, it's pretty much a bye to the quarterfinals. Then you one game from Wembley. So did you sort of start to dream when you saw that draw?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's why I probably didn't get that annoyed as much as other people did when we saw the reverse with Man United and some of the celebrations that came off the back of them drawing us, because it's common sense, let's be honest. And we don't have to do what Robbins has to do in terms of saying, well, it's Maidstone, this, that and the other, and they've beat Ipswich and everything else. We can be relatively honest. I remember the morning of that game, and Ross and I did a little thing with some Maidstone fans for ITV in their local area, and it was quite funny because he said, look, just be completely honest. And Ross called it. We'll give him credit. He called the 5-0 and quite looked all of them in the eyes and told them this is going to be 5-0 tonight.
Battered. You are going to get battered tonight. Imagine Ross coming out of that.
And 100% spot on. So as soon as the draw got made, if you'd have asked me ahead of that draw, who do you want, I'd have said Maidstone home.
Yeah, of course. You'd be silly not to go look at who's left in the draw and go, we'll take Maidstone at home.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the Coventry City of old. We remember losing to these teams that week in, week out. The Wrexham result was obviously and I can't even say the word, anomaly. There you go. I'll take my time.
I got it.
This is a different team now. You don't have that scar tissue from those types of games, and I always thought we were going to batter them regardless. And once the first one in, I was like,
there was no real doubt. No real doubt.
I literally didn't cheer the last two goals. Unlike Tavares, right? It's one of the funniest moments of the season. I've never seen a guy run off and celebrate a goal. We were already 3-0 up, and he celebrated like he just scored in the World Cup final, didn't he?
Bless
It was
him.
mental. I know he hadn't scored for a while, so yeah, fair play to him. But
It was a nice moment.
yeah, it's
you
kind
need a
of
bit-
kind
you
of
need
his
a bit-
level, if I'm honest.
You need a bit of luck with cup runs, don't you? When you're a team at our level, anyway. If you're not a Premier League team, you need a bit of luck. You probably need to get like a couple of favourable draws, and we did that. And then obviously we got Wolves, which was clearly a hard draw, but probably the easiest out of the lot again. Really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I
I think I remember you saying at the time, Dean. You
Yeah,
were
I said-
saying, actually, Wolves away is
Wolves
winnable.
or Brighton away because they still had to play the replay. I was like, that's the winnable game. If you're going to play away, that's the winnable game because you don't want to go to Old Trafford, you don't want to go to Anfield.
No, exactly.
Those are, they're tough games to go.
Yeah.
Regardless of where we are playing or whatever, or how we're playing or how the other team are playing, you want to go to a place where you at least potentially got a chance. And turned out we had, for me, the best performance of the season against Wolves.
Yeah, unbelievable performance away at Wolves. Like chatting to a couple of Wolves fans since, and they said they were like, we've been in the Prem for 6-7 years. And they were like, genuinely, probably one of the best teams we've seen come and play us at
Passed them
Molineux.
off the park.
Yeah.
Like literally passed them off the park. Like they could not
Unbelievable.
cope.
From minute one as well.
Yeah,
There was
it
no
was-
part
yeah, it
of
was
that
constant.
game. Even after going ahead, you think, okay, maybe we're going to revert into that thing that you see of, especially as a Championship team or a Premier League team, you're thinking, this is going to go ultra defensive now, right? It came in the second half. You are getting into that period where you think, okay, you're starting to think you might be able to see it out. There's half an hour left. You potentially can see it out. So you expect to go into see it out mode. And we didn't change the mentality. It was so refreshing to see for any football club to take that approach in that situation, because I'd suggest 99% of any other club in that situation, a lower level against a higher division team, away, big game, whatever else, you're going to go into ultra defensive, hold on to what you have mode. And we,
Like the first half against Manchester United.
yeah, exactly.
But what I liked about that Wolves game is that there was a glimmer of hope in the players' eyes more than anything that, we can play at this level. We can play against Premier League quality. I know Wolves had a lot of injuries at the top end of the pitch, but still, they had nearly 180 million pounds worth of talent on the pitch, regardless of who they had. They all play at Premier League level.
Yeah, that's the reason that the Premier League is such an advantage, right? It's that strength in depth. You can lose 4 or 5 players and you should still be able to rely on players who are, okay, now we have to rely on the guy we spent £20 million on or £25 million on. And that shows it's in those situations where you see the real level of difference, because what they can do in that situation, you kind of go, okay, you're missing 5, 6. We're still missing a couple from what our ideal squad team might be. So reduce that kind of gap a little bit, but even still, you're talking about, we're going to have to now rely on somebody who's only played for Ecuador like 75 times or whatever it might be, these ridiculous situations. And it's kind of, you talk about a glimmer of hope in the players' eyes. It was the lack of hope in that ball boy's eyes at the end of the game, which was one of the most satisfying moments of the whole season.
Good. There's a great camera angle that I saw during the Man United build-up that I'd never seen before. It was like a high angle looking down on the pitch, and you just see Robbins give it absolutely full bout.
Beautiful.
At the kid. It's beautiful to
nice
see. You love to see it.
I really like to see that side of Mark Robbins though,
The passion, proper passion there.
He's so calm normally, and it was good to see him actually lose his head a bit. In that moment, and Gary O'Neill just
he lost his head.
Sore loser.
Yeah, he lost his head completely.
yeah.
Come on, it's in the heat of the moment, then things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And if that little kid hadn't, he's got a life lesson there. Don't take the piss, mate.
Yeah. At the end of the day,
don't take the piss. You got to learn life.
This is a 15-odd-year-old lad or whatever. We're not talking about. You're not talking about a toddler, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about a 15-year-old lad who's giving a bit.
Is that how you deal with your kids?
But you talk about a 15-year-old lads who gave a bit, and he took a bit
And
back.
he's got a
Nobody
lesson.
went up and hit him.
That's a life
if it
lesson
hit
there
him, then
for you,
maybe we're talking about something a bit different, obviously.
No, in times you have to pay for those types of life lessons. He got one for free.
He won't do that again.
You will not do that again.
So yeah, we wouldn't advocate, any level of violence or anything like that, but a little bit of take back what you
part of the game, isn't it?
gave.
It's part of the game. Look, the limbs as well.
Yeah.
Like some just
Probably.
I was in Singapore.
Yeah,
right?
I was in Brazil.
Yeah. So and it was Paddy.
I was in Birmingham, unfortunately. Yeah.
It was Paddy's night as well. Honestly, one of the great nights of the last couple of years for me. It was just insane. And I went to Haji Lane the day after as well for a couple of beers. It's kind of all worked out. But yeah, it was such a great. I just to hear their voice grates on me at the best of times. The Yam Yams. So just to hear their vlogs, right? And just there's a beautiful vlog of like, oh, it's good, oh good. It's like it's just so good. Like
I mean, a lot of people.
That's my favourite game of the season. Like by far.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of COF fans said it's one of their favourite memories, like top 3 games ever.
Yeah.
Up there with
Actually,
like the Notts
it's probably,
Counties and stuff.
it's up there with the Notts Counties easily. Yeah.
That's an unforgettable moment. You know, that will live in the memory for
This is what we're talking about.
forever.
You can't trade in what's happened during the season for
Exactly.
those little moments that have happened as well in the FA Cup. You know,
Yeah.
we can't have both. So what we've gone through this year, you know, enjoy it and, you know, take the memories from it. Really,
100%.
That's the thing. You don't always remember your league position and bits and bobs like that. But you'll
no, when
always
we're
remember
pissing
that.
it next year, we won't. You know, we won't.
It won't matter.
we won't remember
It
that.
won't
You know,
matter.
that late Swansea goal.
Yeah. What do we say about dodgy predictions?
Yeah, we're gonna piss it.
So that will be interesting. Actually, the pre-season pod, the predictions for what comes out this year.
We've got a lot to do tonight. Yeah, we're already an hour and 10 minutes in.
Yeah, right. Well, let's sort of start to round off the season a little bit. Well, let's finish the cup section. Talk a little bit about United at Wembley. Obviously, Matt and I did a whole pod episode dedicated to that day. If you haven't listened to that, definitely give it a listen. But Matt, incredible memories from that day. And again, like Dino said, it is about those days out, isn't it? How do you assess that day now the dust has settled and we've had a bit of time to reflect and recover,
Digest.
The problem.
Get more annoyed every single time you see the
This is the problem. The problem is we're doing this 3-4 days before the cup final. If you ask me this in another week, I'd probably say, okay, right, dust has fully settled and I'm good. And it's kind of one of them, you know. We obviously, as you say,
Just wait to see Man City batter United and go, yeah, you know what, it's fair enough.
it'd be relatively cathartic. No, that is true.
Put it to bed.
That
They
is true.
took the
Like,
hammer in and we didn't.
next week, I'll be able to say, okay, right, well, now the experience and everything would be done. Other than the fact that we'd be like, you know, wallowing in a 5, whatever, we would probably be lost. I don't know. And I'd have happily, we were talking about this on the train on the way back. Would you have taken it for like a 4-0 loss, a 5-0 loss, a 6-0 loss? And there was a lot of yeses from me, to be honest with you, because it's Man City at the end of the day, that experience. But yeah, to be honest, I am, you know, as you say, we spoke in the wake of the game and we were pretty down, I think it's fair to say. And I have improved over the weeks since, but then I've kind of gone down a little bit in the last few days. You start to see the adverts on TV for the cup final and they're talking about even little things like they were talking on Match of the Day about, oh yeah, Ian Wright, we'll see you at Wembley for the cup final. I'm going, oh, you could have seen us as well. And the adverts and silly
There's
little
actually
things
a
like
program
that.
coming on this weekend that's like a look back
Some
at the
like,
cup.
and
Using
the
cup
road
picture of
and all
Wolves.
that kind
They're
of
using the
stuff.
cup picture of Wolves as like the promo for it.
How much joy I would have taken from watching that program if we'd in the
now it's
final
just
versus
heartbreak.
now I can't, because I know ultimately what happens. And silly little things. There's some game show or something with like fans of both teams on it, and it's just like that'd have been COF fans and all that
3
kind
days
of
later after it finished, I was in a bar on the outskirts of Tokyo and the guy put it on the TV. I was like, mate, don't
What are
start.
you doing?
Like, this is PTSD. Don't,
Yeah.
I'm not going to buy any drinks from you now.
So I am struggling a little with the fact that, you know, we are now, look, if we'd have had that goal allowed and we would right now be sat here, well, probably we'd have waited, let's be honest, till after the
We'd probably
final
still be
to do
pissed.
this.
Either
But how excited would we
doing
be?
a preview.
Yeah,
How
100%.
excited would we be right now in the wake of, you know,
But
2-3 days
for me,
waiting to
like,
the cup final?
Don't get me wrong, the FA Cup final would be absolutely incredible to be involved. But
I think we had our final.
what bothers me more is that we got robbed of that piece of history.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
you know, 4-3 against United, come back from 3-0 down. That Torp goal would have been played forever.
Well, it would have been the greatest game in
Comeback.
FA Cup
Yeah.
history, regardless of any final that's
And
happened.
I just
Yeah.
like less about the final for me and more about that we just got robbed of that, like, that etch in history.
And I think you are
and
right there.
And
using
Torp
that-
himself as
that-
well.
Using that word robbed. I still believe, maybe not a conspiracy, but through human error, we've been robbed.
100%.
I
Even
can't.
using VAR, right?
I can't.
100%.
I have to. When you see on Twitter and people say about it being, you know, they want to make it a all Manchester final and all this kind of stuff, and I kind of say, well, okay, I can't go to that level, because if that was the case, they just would have not given the penalty, right? That would have been a really easy way to have guaranteed that to have been the case, right? Even the fact of the day before, they had a very similar decision, not given as a penalty. You know, they could have quite easily not had it go to extra time if they'd have not had that situation. So I can't personally see that as some kind of corruption or anything like that, but it's just the frustration of obviously, the way it happened in the end. Obviously,
I don't believe in any conspiracies. I just think it's the way VAR is being used, and the way it's being handled is really poor, and that we could do a whole other 4 hours on that topic.
No, I mean, just go back and listen to that episode because, it's just we've got so much to cover tonight. But it's like great memories from that day, and we've basically been robbed of, like you said, of the greatest result in FA Cup history, and I believe that was our final, and we won personally.
Yeah.
And whatever happens on Saturday.
So you're going to Wembley anyway, and you're gonna wear your cop shirt and basically pretend.
Fucking bring it on, let's go. It'd be like that Arsenal fan walking through.
Mate,
Chelsea,
what an idiot! What's he thinking?
Yeah, I don't know.
What a plonker!
What's Wenger doing, trying to bring Walker on that early?
Just jumping back to the league. Just jumping back into the league slightly. Before the United game, some odd results really. We obviously picked off Rotherham quite convincingly. Really professional performance, and then we obviously beat Huddersfield away. We beat Watford away. Some good results there, but then games like Cardiff at home, just frustrating. Like just sleepwalking into a 2-1 defeat, 2 own goals. Just not ideal at that stage of the season, Dean.
Southampton and the Birmingham games as well, because you're sleepwalking into the Man United game, and then obviously the United game happens and it has a detrimental effect to the rest of the season, and it's just all the domino effect. Once one falls, it all goes. And
because we can't even say it was all post Man United, right?
No,
we had the
before that,
2 or 3 games before that. It started by that point, hadn't it? So
Leeds at home, obviously a brilliant win, and probably another nomination for our game of the season. Record attendance as well at the CBS, Matt. That's another one that obviously sticks in the memory. Nice to beat a big club like Leeds, who potentially will be in the Premier League next season. Yeah,
that's up there again when I talk about best days we've had at the CBS, and that's that certainly is one that will stick in the memory for a long time. The atmosphere was fantastic pre-game, even just in the fact of the excitement was starting to build in terms of Wembley and the FA Cup semi-final. That's where it felt like, it felt like it really sank in for people what was coming with that semi-final, and playing Leeds is always, they are a big team, let's be honest. So it's a big game and an opportunity for us to show what we can do. So the atmosphere was just unreal from obviously pre-kickoff, and just such a great performance. We talked. I remember being on the podcast after that game. We were talking about the way that Leeds played, and they had a lot of the ball, but it was one of those situations again. We just seemed so comfortable to allow them to move that ball up to in and around the edge of our area, out to those wide areas, just kind of outside of our box, and just contain them in those situations. And people talking about chances and everything else, and I kind of look back in certainly first half, they really didn't create that much of an actual real clear-cut opportunity in my mind. There were a couple of moments, but even still, people looked at the Bamford moment where it went across goal, but that really wasn't a great chance when you look at the situation for Bamford. And I just felt like we allowed them to do what we were happy for them to do, and just managed that game fantastically. I think we acknowledged the fact of, let's be honest, talent-wise, ability-wise, there's probably a better 11 players over the opposite end of the pitch to us, but let's just be realistic in terms of containing them in certain areas of the pitch, and then we have to just be clinical in terms of what we did. And it was an example. We talk about those games earlier in the season, the Bristol Cities, and that little period of game where we struggled to obviously impose our dominance on the game, and that cost us. And here we probably allowed them to maybe dominate the ball, but managed to go up the other end and nick a goal, and that completely changes the game. It was like the Bristol City, you can say in some regards.
You hit the nail on the head there. We managed the game well. And that's something we didn't do in that whole last period of games. We didn't manage it well, and we made way too many individual errors. And the Leeds game was the last time I remember we didn't make any individual errors that game, and we played as a team. after that, it was just shambolic. Really.
Even their goal,
Yeah.
people kind of were talking about the fact it was bobbling around the area and everything. But again, you get into those areas of the pitch that often.
Those things are going to happen.
Certain things are going to
naturally,
happen, and there was nothing by design.
It's how you deal with that.
and it
We
was
just
in
deal with
the
it.
end
We
well
deal with it,
taken, well taken goal. So even that goal in itself wasn't.
Collins made a good save from another.
Yeah, very good save.
Pinball.
Yeah.
But it wasn't through our own fault. Like
Yeah.
we were in the right position. It was just the natural thing that happens with a football, basically.
Yeah.
And a poor end to the season, Dean,
just the
as we
manager,
discussed in our, in the last couple of podcasts we did. Lost at home to Hull, Ipswich and QPR, and drew 0-0 away at Blackburn. Albeit the players didn't have a lot left in the tank, did they?
It was all done from that man. That, as I said, that Man United game just seeped everything out. The belief had gone.
Like you said, that whole game, I felt mentally tired. I felt it was a struggle to have the motivation to go at the CBS,
It was a natural
Yeah.
thing
which is
that
bonkers
happens,
at that
right?
stage of the season.
Yeah.
You should be gunning. At
Yeah.
the end of last season,
Yeah.
we were like,
Couldn't
can't
wait to get up there.
Whereas
It was
this
like,
time, everything it just been
Yeah.
like the life had just been drained
Yeah,
out.
it was
You
weird,
know,
weird atmosphere.
It was
that night.
inevitable what was going to happen,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that game really put the nail in the coffin for the rest of the season. Which, as we said, it's one we can look back with, content, also disappointment, but also very very happy memories.
Some brilliant memories. And just to round that bit off, in terms of the stats, because I love a stat.
Are you Andy? Is it?
We finished ninth position with 64 points, scored 70, conceded 59. Interestingly, scored a lot more goals than last season, but we also conceded a fair few more, and obviously some quite poor goals at times as well. We also had a lot less clean sheets than last season. Won 17, drew 13, lost 16, which interestingly last season we won 18, drew 16 and lost 12. So we look at it like that, in those early games, we weren't that far off in terms of the results.
Just 4 or 5 results,
Yeah.
turning on its head. The draw, the Swansea game.
It's
we get
marginal,
to-
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really marginal.
How many points did you need for the playoffs this year?
I think it was slightly higher, wasn't it?
73. So it's more than what we got last year.
Yeah.
It was always going to be an uphill struggle with the quality in the league. So yeah, I'm fairly content. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to have a real quick drinks break, and then we'll be back for the retain list and the SkyBluesExtra awards.